Imagine a place where the world's most feared criminals are locked away, isolated from the outside world, deep in the heart of Colorado. A place known for housing men whose names strike fear across nations, leaders of violent organizations and masterminds behind catastrophic events. Welcome to ADX Florence, the most secure prison in the United States. In this video, we will reveal the 10 most dangerous gang members and leaders confined here. Individuals who've commanded loyalty and chaos from within their cells. They are figures of power and influence, despite being held in the most secure prison on the planet. Stay with us as we uncover their stories, the reasons they ended up in ADX, and why they are considered so dangerous. Number 8. Peter Rollick of the Sex Money Murder Gang. Peter Rollick, known as Pistol Pete, born in 1974 and raised in the Soundview projects of the Bronx, New York, became a notorious figure in American gang culture. He was closely tied to Nicky Barnes, the infamous illicit substance kingpin, and came of age during the violent crack epidemic of the 1980s. It was during this period that Rollick earned his infamous nickname, Pistol Pete, for his ruthless approach to violence. He founded the gang Sex Money Murder in 1993, a criminal enterprise that would expand beyond the Bronx, operating substance distribution lines up and down the East Coast. Sex Money Murder was born in the midst of the chaos of the crack illicit substance epidemic that gripped New York in the late 1980s and early 1990s. The gang's name became synonymous with violence, as they battled rival gangs and solidified their control over lucrative substance territories in the Bronx. Rollick, as the leader, was known not only for orchestrating violence, but for personally carrying out terminations. Unlike many gang leaders who distanced themselves from street-level crime, Pistol Pete took a hands-on approach. SMM eventually became affiliated with the Bloods gang when the United Blood Nation was formed on the East Coast in the mid-1990s. Peter Rollick's reign of terror began to unravel as law enforcement intensified its efforts to dismantle the gang. In 1997, Rollick was arrested and indicted for numerous crimes, including manslaughter, racketeering, and substance trafficking. He was charged with ordering and committing several manslaughter, most notably the termination of 2 fellow SMM members during a Thanksgiving football game in the Bronx, a turning point that led to the community breaking its silence about the gang's activities. To avoid the death penalty, Rollick accepted a plea deal in 2000, admitting to his role in at least 6 manslaughter activities. As part of the deal, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Rollick was sent to ADX Florence, the Supermax federal prison in Colorado, where he remains in solitary confinement till date. Number 7. Perry Rourke of the Dead Man Incorporated Gang. Perry Rourke's life took a dark turn early on, cementing his name in the violent history of organized crime, particularly within the United States prison system. Born in Maryland, Rourke found himself incarcerated in the early 1990s. And over time, he became notorious as the founder and leader of Dead Man Incorporated DMI, a prison gang that rose to prominence in the Maryland correctional system. Rourke's trajectory into leadership came about after his failed attempt to join the Black Guerrilla Family, BGF. Rejected due to his race, Rourke decided to create his own organization, DMI, in 2000. Alongside James Sweeney and Brian Jordan. With Rourke at the helm as the supreme commander, DMI quickly grew into a force to be reckoned with. The foundation of DMI was rooted in the idea of uniting white inmates in a system where racial divisions ran deep. Rourke and his co-founders modeled their organization on the BGF, aiming to create a structured and ruthless group that could offer protection, power, and influence inside the prison walls. DMI's expansion was rapid, largely thanks to Michael Quinn, an individual who infiltrated the gang to secure his own safety. Under Rourke's guidance, the gang's focus was on sheer numbers rather than the quality of its recruits. This allowed DMI to grow swiftly across multiple states, with operations spreading from Maryland to Louisiana, Pennsylvania, and Texas. Rourke's influence extended far beyond the prison walls. Under his leadership, DMI became involved in an array of illicit activities, including smuggling contraband into prisons. Rourke orchestrated the distribution of substances, tobacco, and cell phones among inmates, often using visitors to sneak items into prison facilities. The gang's communication networks were robust, with members using cell phones to organize their activities, monitor law enforcement investigations, and coordinate retaliatory actions against perceived enemies or informants. Rourke's leadership style was ruthless, and he demonstrated his power by ordering several life-threatening attacks. Although many of his plans did not come to fruition, his capacity for violence was clear. He directed the 2009 attack on Tony Geiger, an individual who posed a threat to the gang's interests. Despite the risks of leading such an organization, Rourke's grip on DMI remained strong, even while incarcerated. He faced numerous legal battles, with authorities working tirelessly to dismantle his operations. In 2011, the Maryland authorities postponed his potential release from state prison when new charges surfaced, involving the death of George Hartman, a fellow inmate in Jessup. This development only added to the mountain of charges Rourke faced, including conspiring to commit violent crimes and managing a criminal enterprise that extended well beyond state lines. His arrest and subsequent legal battles culminated in a life sentence in federal prison in 2013, following a conviction for conspiracy to participate in a racketeering enterprise. The sentence was handed down by U.S. District Judge Richard D. Bennett, who recommended that Rourke serve his time in the maximum security ADX Florence prison in Colorado, where he is still serving his sentence till date. Number 6. Cornelio Tristan of the Nuestra Familia gang. Cornelio Tristan was a key figure within Nuestra Familia, a notorious prison gang known for its violent control over the streets of Northern California. Tristan, along with other high-ranking members of Nuestra Familia, operated from inside some of the most secure prison facilities in the country, including Pelican Bay State Prison and later the ADX Florence Supermax Prison. He was one of the top generals, responsible for orchestrating the gang's activities from within prison walls. Despite the extreme security measures in place, such as isolation in the Security Housing Unit, SHU, at Pelican Bay, gang leaders like Tristan managed to maintain communication with their subordinates outside through coded messages known as kites. These messages allowed the leadership to order violent attacks, substance deals, and other criminal enterprises on the streets while they were locked away. In 2004, Tristan, along with other Nuestra Familia leaders, such as James Morado, Joseph Hernandez, and Gerald Rubalcaba, was transferred to ADX Florence following a federal indictment. The transfer was part of a larger operation known as Operation Black Widow, which aimed to dismantle the leadership of Nuestra Familia by charging its top members with federal racketeering and conspiracy crimes. These charges were tied to the gang's involvement in ordering assassinations and overseeing substance trafficking from inside prison. Despite their transfer to ADX Florence, Tristan and his fellow leaders were still able to exert some influence over the gang. However, the move did lead to internal power struggles within Nuestra Familia, with some members remaining loyal to the exiled leaders, while others shifted their allegiance to new leaders who emerged in Pelican Bay. David D.C. Cervantes eventually rose to become the sole general of the gang, though some factions within the gang continued to support the old guard in ADX Florence. Cornelio Tristan, who was 44 years old at the time of his sentencing, pleaded guilty to federal racketeering charges alongside 4 other top generals of Nuestra Familia. In 2005, he was sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. His indictment and eventual conviction were part of a sweeping effort to disrupt the gang's control over Northern California's streets. Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger commuted the state life sentences of Tristan and his co-defendants to allow them to be prosecuted and sentenced in federal court. As part of the federal plea agreement, it was stipulated that if Tristan or any of the other leaders were ever released from federal prison, their original state sentences would be reinstated. While Tristan's specific activities within ADX Florence have not been as widely documented as his actions while in Pelican Bay, it is known that Nuestra Familia leaders continued to engage in gang-related activities from within the federal Supermax facility. As of today, Cornelio Tristan remains in federal custody at the ADX Florence prison, serving his life sentence. Number 5. Omar Porte of the United Blood Nation Gang. Omar Porte, also known as OG Mac, was born around 1969 and rose to prominence as the founder of the United Blood Nation, UBN, gang. His criminal journey began at a young age, setting the stage for the violent and dangerous life he would later lead. Porte started his career as a robber at 17, and by the late 1980s, he was entangled in legal troubles. In 1987, Omar Porte became a witness in a criminal case, testifying against Don Taylor, who was later convicted. However, Porte later recanted his testimony, and Taylor's conviction was overturned in 2004. By then, Porte had already paved his way toward a notorious life of organized crime. Porte's most significant impact came while he was incarcerated at Rikers Island in 1993. Alongside Leonard O.G. Deadeye McKenzie, Porte formed the United Blood Nation, a prison-based gang. The UBN would grow into one of the most feared and dangerous gangs on the East Coast, spreading violence far beyond the prison walls. Under Porte's leadership, the gang expanded rapidly and became notorious for its violent clashes, particularly with the rival Latin Kings gang. In 1996, Omar Porte led a brutal attack inside Rikers Island using a shiv, fashioned from a Scrabble game piece, to target members of the Latin Kings. This attack resulted in multiple inmates being seriously injured. After being released from prison in 1999, Porte wasted no time in expanding the United Blood Nation into a street gang, building an empire fueled by illegal activities. He divided the gang into various factions or sets, including the infamous Sex Money Murder, which was headed by Peter Rollick, another feared leader within the UBN. Porte himself led the 1-8 Tray set, based in the Bronx. The gang controlled substance distribution, theft rings, and other criminal enterprises, often involving members as young as 16 years old. Omar Porte ruled with an iron fist, ordering violent attacks against rival dealers and individuals who threatened his operations. In 2002, Omar Porte was arrested and later convicted of multiple serious charges, including conspiracy, organized crime, and involvement in illegal substance trafficking. His actions, which involved organizing violence, credit card fraud, and controlling street-level operations, were central to his downfall. In August 2002, Porte was convicted of 10 counts of criminal activity, ranging from illegal trafficking to conspiracy, and was sentenced in April 2003 to 50 years in prison by U.S. District Judge Naomi Rice Buchwald. The court found him responsible for leading one of the most violent criminal organizations on the East Coast, and his sentence was intended to reflect the severity of his crimes and serve as a deterrent to others. Throughout his time in prison, particularly during his incarceration at ADX Florence, the infamous Supermax facility in Colorado, Omar Porte remained a significant figure within the United Blood Nation. Even while in this maximum security environment, Porte continued to maintain influence over his gang's operations, which extended to various criminal activities in and outside the prison system. In 2021, Porte was moved from ADX Florence to the United States Penitentiary, Florence High, as part of the ADX Step-Down program, which is designed to gradually reintroduce inmates into less restrictive environments. However, by January 2022, Omar Porte was returned to ADX Florence, where he remains incarcerated till this day. Number 4. Pedro Gutierrez of the Nine Trey Gangsters Gang. Pedro Gutierrez, also known as Magoo, is a high-ranking member of the Nine Trey Gangsters, a faction of the United Blood Nation, UBN or Bloods. His criminal activities and leadership within the gang span decades, earning him the notorious position of godfather within the organization. Gutierrez held a prominent role in the Nine Trey Gangsters, serving as the chairman of the council that governs the UBN, a position he had since 2003. Alongside fellow gang leaders like James Baxton, aka Frank White, who was the worldwide high, Gutierrez maintained control over the gang's illicit operations from within the New York State Department of Corrections, where he was serving time. Together with Baxton and Omari Rosero, he was described as one of the last ones that God put in power over the UBN, exercising considerable influence over gang activities on the streets and within prison walls. Pedro Gutierrez's criminal record reflects a pattern of violent and organized crime, often carried out from behind bars. He orchestrated a gang war in North Carolina in 2011, ordering members of the Bloods to attack a renegade faction known as Pretty Tony. This directive led to multiple inmate injuries and resulted in the lockdown of 5 North Carolina prisons for 6 months. Gutierrez, along with other top leaders, also participated in the collection and distribution of gang dues, which were derived from substance trafficking, robberies, and other criminal activities. In 2018, Gutierrez was convicted in a federal trial in Charlotte, North Carolina, for racketeering conspiracy, along with James Baxton and Cynthia Gilmore, a lower-ranking member of the gang. The trial evidence laid bare the extent of their control over the gang's illicit activities, including substance trafficking and violent crime. Gutierrez's leadership within the Nine Trey Gangsters was marked by a brutal and hands-on approach to managing the gang's operations. His directive to launch a gang war and his participation in ordering assignation orders and violent assaults highlighted his dangerous personality and standing as a formidable gang leader. His role in orchestrating and sustaining the gang's criminal enterprise from within prison further underscored his ability to evade typical law enforcement efforts aimed at curbing gang activity. In 2018, Pedro Gutierrez was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for racketeering conspiracy, a sentence that was to be served consecutively to his existing sentence. His co-defendant, James Baxton, received a similar 20-year sentence. The federal convictions and sentences were part of a larger federal effort to dismantle the Nine Trey Gangsters and the UBN, which resulted in the convictions of 61 defendants, many of whom were high-ranking members of the gang. As of the latest reports, Pedro Gutierrez remains incarcerated, serving his sentence in ADX Florence prison. Number 3. Fotios. Freddy Guillas of the Genovese crime family gang. Fotios Freddy Guillas built a notorious reputation in the criminal underworld, particularly as a feared enforcer for the Genovese crime family. Born into a life of violence and organized crime, Guillas grew up in West Springfield, Massachusetts, and by the early 2000s, his name was synonymous with some of the most ruthless activities within the region's mafia circles. His involvement with the Genovese family, one of the 5 families dominating the New York mafia scene, brought him into contact with numerous violent individuals and dangerous operations. But Guillas stood out for his willingness to take on the most brutal tasks. In 2003, Guillas orchestrated the demise of Springfield mob boss Adolfo Big Al Bruno, a move that elevated him in the eyes of his mafia peers. Bruno was gunned down in a parking lot in Springfield, with Guillas behind the plot. Guillas was also involved in the disappearance of Gary Westerman, a low-level associate of the mob. Westerman was lured into a trap where he was struck in the head, buried, and left to disappear from existence entirely. These crimes established Guillas as someone who operated without hesitation. Guillas and his brother, Ty, operated as a lethal duo in the Springfield area, assisting the Genovese crime family in enforcing its control over local rackets and eliminating anyone who posed a threat to their dominance. Freddy was fiercely loyal to the criminal code of silence, despising anyone who turned informant. And in 2018, Gaius found himself embroiled in a violent event that drew national attention. James Whitey Bulger, the infamous leader of Boston's Winter Hill Gang and a known FBI informant, was transferred to U.S. Penitentiary Hazleton in West Virginia. Just 12 hours after his transfer, Bulger was discovered unresponsive, the result of a coordinated act of brutality. Gaius, along with 2 other inmates, was soon implicated in the assault. According to authorities, Bulger was struck repeatedly in the head, and Gaius' hatred for informants made him the prime suspect in the attack. Gaius was later indicted on charges related to the assault on Bulger, along with 2 other inmates, Paul DeCollegiero and Sean McKinnon. These charges highlighted not only Gaius' ongoing influence in the prison system, but also his unwavering adherence to the criminal world's rules, where betrayal was met with the harshest possible response. Bulger's demise was seen by many as a form of mob justice, and Gaius was at the center of it all. The event brought renewed scrutiny to the management of the Hazleton prison, which had gained a reputation for its dangerous conditions, leading to multiple inmate conflicts. Before the Bulger incident, Gaius had already been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for his role in the Bruno and Westerman incidents. His ruthless methods, including the execution of both powerful mafia figures and low-level associates, showcased his cold-blooded approach to dealing with enemies, whether within the mafia or those who broke its unspoken rules. While in prison, Gaius remained an influential figure, feared by both inmates and prison staff. His reputation for violence followed him, and his connection to the Genovese family allowed him to maintain power, even from behind bars. Gaius has spent significant time in solitary confinement due to his actions, including his involvement in the Bulger incident. Until date, he continues to serve his sentence at ADX Florence prison in Colorado. James J. Marcello, born December 13, 1943, earned a reputation as a powerful and dangerous figure in the underworld. Known as Little Jimmy, or Jimmy the Man, Marcello rose through the ranks of the Chicago Outfit, one of the most notorious criminal organizations in America. His calm and calculating demeanor disguised a leadership role that commanded respect and fear within the criminal network. While others managed the Chicago Outfit's day-to-day operations, Marcello was regarded as a figurehead, but his quiet influence was undeniable. Marcello's criminal career began in the 1980s, when authorities first identified him as a key player in the Chicago Outfit. He worked closely with high-profile mob bosses, serving as a driver and confidant to individuals like Joseph Aiuppa and Sam "Wings" Carlisi. By 1983, Marcello became a fully inducted member of the outfit, a step that allegedly required proof of loyalty through dangerous actions. Despite having no previous criminal record, his deep connections and commitment to the organization placed him in a position of power. In 1992, Marcello was charged with racketeering alongside Sam Carlisi. The charges linked him to illegal operations, including bookmaking, loan sharking, and extortion across Chicago's western suburbs. Marcello's willingness to enforce the mob's will through intimidating means made him a target for law enforcement. He was also found guilty of plotting an act of violence against an associate believed to be cooperating with authorities. These charges earned him a prison sentence of 12.5 years, marking the first major blow to his criminal career. Marcello's time in prison did little to disrupt his influence within the outfit. After his release in 2003, he returned to his home in Lombard, Illinois, resuming his ties with the organization. By 2005, the infamous Family Secrets trial ensnared Marcello once again. He was indicted on charges related to several violent events, including the 1986 incident involving the brothers Anthony and Michael Spilotro. The Spilotro brothers, associated with organized crime in Las Vegas, were found in a shallow grave in Indiana. The story of their final moments has become part of the outfit's dark history. Although others in the trial testified, Marcello chose silence, refusing to defend himself in court. Marcello's conviction in the family secrets trial led to life imprisonment in 2009. Despite his reputation as calm and controlled, he was convicted of participating in multiple illegal activities spanning decades. His sentencing underscored his role in the outfit's violent history, and federal authorities ensured he was held accountable for his part in the Spilotro brothers' case. Marcello's conduct in court was marked by an eerie calm, and even the judge acknowledged his capability to do better, suggesting that Marcello's judgment and self-control made him even more dangerous than some of his co-defendants after his life sentence. Today, Marcello remains imprisoned at ADX Florence, where he continues to serve his prison sentence. Number 1. Tyler the Hulk Bingham of Aryan Brotherhood. Tyler the Hulk Bingham stands as one of the most dangerous figures in the American prison system, rising to infamy through his leadership in the Aryan Brotherhood, AB, a violent white supremacist gang. His criminal history and time in prison, particularly at the high-security ADX Florence, reveal a complex web of manipulation, violence, and control. Born into a world where crime often defines survival, Bingham's rise through the ranks of the Aryan Brotherhood was swift and decisive. Alongside Barry Mills, another high-ranking member, Bingham was instrumental in the gang's operations, both inside and outside prison walls. The Aryan Brotherhood, with its strict code of loyalty and dominance, thrived on violence, racial hatred, and control of illegal activities, such as gambling and the distribution of controlled substances. Bingham and Mills were not just members of the gang, but its architects, expanding its reach across federal and state prisons. One of Bingham's most infamous actions occurred in 1997, when he and Mills orchestrated a race war within the prison system, targeting black inmates. This conflict erupted in federal prisons across the country and was part of a broader plan to consolidate the Aryan Brotherhood's power. According to federal prosecutors, Bingham played a pivotal role in ordering attacks on rival groups, including the DC Blacks, a rival gang within the prison system. The conflict escalated into a violent campaign, with coded messages, including some written in invisible ink, smuggled between prisons, directing Aryan Brotherhood members to attack. In 2006, Bingham, along with Mills and other top Aryan Brotherhood leaders, was indicted on numerous charges, including conspiracy, assault, and racketeering. The indictment accused them of orchestrating a series of attacks from their prison cells, enforcing the gang's code of violence and discipline through intimidation and coercion. Prosecutors highlighted Bingham's dangerous personality during his trial, recounting how he continued to influence gang members across the country while imprisoned. One of the most telling examples was his involvement in coordinating the demise of 2 black inmates as part of the race war. The manslaughter were not spur-of-the-moment incidents, but calculated moves designed to spark widespread violence in the prison system. Bingham's orders reached across prison yards, communicated through notes written in code or hidden in seemingly innocent texts, further demonstrating his cunning and resourcefulness. Bingham's trial, held in 2006, was a landmark case in the fight against organized crime within prisons. Federal prosecutors painted a grim picture of a man who, despite being behind bars, held significant power over a network of criminals and orchestrated violence with chilling efficiency. During the trial, jurors were shown evidence of Bingham's leadership and his ability to incite violence, even when confined in the nation's most secure prison. Bingham's actions, particularly his role in orchestrating the race war, earned him a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Despite the government's push for the death penalty, the jury deadlocked, sparing Bingham from execution, but ensuring that he would spend the rest of his life in prison. Even though Bingham's defense argued that he posed no further threat and would be isolated in maximum security conditions, prosecutors insisted that his influence within the Aryan Brotherhood remained dangerous. As of today, Tyler Bingham is still serving his life sentence in ADX Florence prison in Colorado.